Welcome back. Joining us again are Leah Berry and Lauren Foster, and thanks for being here to both of you. Let me ask you this, we've been talking about suicide and preventing suicide. There's a stigma attached to suicide. There is, and individuals who are even thinking about it. So if you're, again, thinking of intervening in that, there's that part of it as well, that you don't want to make a situation worse. Do you run into that a lot?
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of stigma around mental health and substance abuse in general. That is getting better over time, and we're not where we need to be with that. What I like to say to folks is that I view mental health the same as I do physical health. That if it's something that you would go to a doctor for, it's same thing with mental health, that going to a doctor and seeking treatment, you would do that in the same way that you would a medical condition.
Well, and that makes sense. I mean, what could be worse, right, than losing that individual?
Right.
What are the steps? We've talked about maybe the first step, calling somebody like you. But what are the steps for recovery? Because I'm assuming you can recover from this.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's the most important thing in this conversation, is that it is something that you can get treatment for. There's not something wrong with you if you're struggling with something like this. There's all kinds of reasons why it would happen or anything like that, but there are ways that you can get treatment and you can get help. Like you said, you can call, if this is the first time, and we see that a lot, if someone will call on the crisis line and say, this is the first time I've ever said anything to anyone about this, because that being anonymous is kind of allows for some of those more difficult conversations to happen more easily than sitting face to face with a stranger, like a therapist that you've not met or anything like that. So, reaching out to someone you trust first is kind of where Hopeline sits, or to a family member or a friend, and then I'm sure you can talk about some more of the steps after that.
So I think when somebody is ready to take this step to seek professional help, then I think that's a matter of accessing resources. Hopeline can help give a list of resources in a particular area. Another resource.
Can you interject here?
Yeah.
What kind of resources? Maybe a little more specifically for someone who's watching, and is it just simply talking to a therapist? Is there medication? Are there what options are out there for someone who might be going, listen, I've tried it all?
I have a different answer for a person who's never been before versus a person who's tried it all. So starting with a person who has never been through treatment before, I think you can access care in whatever point of contact that you want to. If somebody is most comfortable talking to a therapist, then you can start there and get their recommendations and be assessed essentially, and to see what they would recommend. You can also go to a psychiatrist and be assessed by a psychiatrist. You can go to your primary care doctor and say, this is what I'm struggling with, what do you think I should do? And they can point you in a direction. I think for somebody who feels like they've tried it all, the messages that I would send them is not to give up. That sometimes recovery is a long process. Sometimes the solutions aren't obvious and right there in front of you, and that there are lots of people that can help. And so it's seeking the people that you're already working with and asking what next steps you could take.
Oftentimes a person who's thinking and contemplating suicide probably is not in the best position to see all the different alternatives and opportunities. Well, you guys, you've been doing this a while, and for our viewers, and maybe some who really need a little hope, thus Hopeline, you've seen people come through the system. Do you have some inspiring stories you can offer up?
Yeah, I can give the Hopeline perspective, and then you can add. But I will say, for a crisis line, sometimes we don't get that follow-up that we want, and sometimes no news is good news, right? So we assume that the people that call us, and if we end up providing a resource or something like that, that they're taking those steps. But then we also get people who call back and say, I'm so glad that I called and just talked to someone about it, and was able to kind of process what I need to do next. And then we even have a whole wall in our office where our volunteers will write on little sticky notes where people say oh my gosh, you saved my life, or I I never would have made it through without just talking to someone, or thank you so much for caring and for actually listening to me, and those things. So we see that a lot, which is really, really nice.
See, I think that's great news, because for a person contemplating, they don't see that.
Right.
For someone, this morning watching, to know that you can get there is a pretty big deal. Well, I know you guys probably need volunteers.
Yes.
And folks to help. How can folks do that?
Sure. Well, we are mostly run by volunteers. We have a couple staff in the office, but I think that's one really cool thing about Hopeline, is that it's just people who want to help other people. So if you want to volunteer, we have a whole training process. Like I mentioned earlier, you go through 40 hours of training. We'll train you on how to deal with things like suicide, but also the other issues that we deal with on the crisis line of just general depression or loneliness, anxiety, and mental illness, if that is something that they are dealing with on a regular basis. We deal with all of that. So we lean on a bunch of community partners and things like that who come in and talk to you, the volunteers, about how to deal with these different issues in the realm of active listening. And so it's pretty cool. We have people who are in college who are wanting to get some experience. We have people who are retired who want to just give back to their community. And it's something that you don't have to be a certain type of person to be able to do it. We train you on how to listen effectively and help people, and you just have to have that compassion for people to want to do it. So,
well, I think one of the most important things said today is you treat it as you would a broken arm. It's as real as that. And do not always err on the side of caution. Both of you, and Brian too, thank you so much for being here, or Barry, I'm sorry, for being here this morning. And thank you for what you do.
Yeah.
And thank you too for watching. We hope you enjoyed today's show. To view this and other episodes of Community Matters, visit our websites at RaleighCW.com and myrdctv.com. I'm Bill LeMay, and thank you for watching Community Matters, and we'll see you next week.